Hi, I just want to put this video together because that's us now had our heat pump in our own house now for just over a year, so 13 months. So I've got some numbers, some data, and I would maybe like to say to you guys, do I have any regrets and have we hit any bumps along the way? So let's just try and cover that on this video. So in November last year, we got our heat pump installed. So probably worth mentioning, we've got a detached bungalow, 1930s bungalow. So not particularly well insulated at the front, but in fairness, the back of the house is quite well insulated, and also it's a 1.5 story bungalow. So it's converted at the top, which is maybe 16, 17 years old, so there's actually quite good insulation values in there. So insulation is a big part of an efficient system. Part of the system also, we got our underfloor insulated with essentially glass wool. So we took a decision to get the heat pump installed. Our gas boiler was on its last legs. It also did have to coincide with getting a new kitchen, just because of where everything is. So it was quite a lot of upheaval, not going to lie, but the boys were in and out in a week. So out went the old heating system and in goes a new heating system. So it's all copper, it's all oversized pipes, oversized radiators, all the rads were out. For me, the most important thing in a heat pump installation is getting your design right. So Lee from Green Heat Scotland, who came out to install our pump, at the quotation stage, personally I thought, this guy's off his head, he's spending ages here, 3 hours he was in doing all the heat loss calcs, and he came up with a design, and part of that design was a 7 kilowatt heat pump, Vaillant, whereas another design another quote we had done really without any design, I would say, was wanting to put in a 10 or a 12 kilowatt heat pump, and a 12 kilowatt it was. So getting that design right is absolutely paramount to getting your system efficient. So what I would say is don't scrimp at that point in the journey if you're going down this route. So most important thing for me is getting the design right, and then obviously getting it installed as per design. So with a heat pump, basically the most efficient way to run it is just have it on 24/7. So if you touch the radiators in our home, they will very rarely be more than warm, and you just think there's no way that can heat this house, but it does, it just does. So again, it's oversized pipes and oversized radiators, but I think possibly because you don't let the mass of your house cool down, because the heating's essentially always on, then it isn't having to work really hard to heat your home. So it's a totally different concept, and it's also why I think in social housing it's probably going to not work for a lot of people, because they're so ingrained in their head, oh, turn the heating off, turn the heating down. That doesn't work. You have to leave the heating on. So we leave it on 24/7. We've got an EV tariff, which makes it really, really cheap to run. So we get a guaranteed 6-hour slot overnight at 7 pence a kilowatt hour, which is very, very cheap. So we choose to heat our hot water during that period. So that's inefficient time to heat your water because it's cold in the middle of the night, but at 7 pence a kilowatt hour, it makes perfect sense. So we also put a 40-minute boost round about 1 o'clock on the hot water, only because what I was noticing was sometimes if I came back from work and my wife and 2 daughters had, let's say, been washing their hair, yeah, there was enough hot water in the shower, but I would have liked it just a little bit warmer. So we possibly don't need that 40-minute boost during the day, but I choose to do it anyway. So how do I work out how much this is cost? So you need to put a price per kilowatt hour. So again, our tariff, 6 hours at 7 pence per kilowatt hour. Anything that's running in the whole house is ran at 7 pence a kilowatt hour, but we store a lot of energy into our battery storage system at home. So we have 28 kilowatt hours of battery storage, and we also have a lot of solar. So essentially, most of our energy consumption, and the percentage numbers actually north of 95%, runs at that cheap rate. So some of our heating costs will be free of charge because it actually comes from solar. However, I will just use the sum at 7 pence a kilowatt hour. So it's actually going to be a bit less than that, but let's run the numbers on 7 pence a kilowatt hour. So I hope I've explained why or how I came to 7 pence a kilowatt hour. So if we want to talk about the performance estimations, so when you're getting your design done, assuming you're going with an MCS contractor, you would be mad not to. You're going to get performance estimations similar to solar. So the performance estimations we got was 4,317 kilowatt hours for our heating and 2,569 kilowatt hours for our hot water, totaling 6,885 kilowatt hours for our whole water and heating system. Now, what that actually equated to in a 13-month period was 5,767 kilowatt hours. So let's subtract about 600 kilowatt hours from this month to the middle of last month. So it's December, worth mentioning, it's pretty mild this winter. So our 12-month running costs have pretty much been 5,170 kilowatt hours. So again, based on hot water and heating. So when you work all that out, that equates to £362 per year. So that's £362 to keep our home warm 24/7 and give us enough hot water based on 7 pence a kilowatt hour. So the numbers absolutely stack up. So with the heat pump, as I said earlier, you leave it on 24/7. Therefore, it's not like gas, you put it on when you're cold. You just leave it on, so you're always going to have a nice, warm, cosy home. Ours pretty much sits at around about 20 degrees in our living room. Different rooms, and again, this was all covered in the design, different rooms have different temperatures applied to them. And that actually does work. So if all the doors are open, all the heat tends to mix together. However, let's say, for example, if our living room into kitchen door was closed at night time, see if we open the door and walk into the kitchen, there is a notable difference because that was designed to be 2 degrees cooler than the living room. So if you get all your design right and then carried out properly, that's how effective the system is. So let's talk about the COP and SCOP. So SCOP is your seasonal measurements for how efficient your system is. In fact, worth mentioning at this point, I noticed that we had a bit of an issue with our COP readings. So I was very confident that the system wasn't not working properly, but I was pretty confident that the COP readings were inaccurate. So there was quite a bit of toing and froing between myself, the installers, and Vaillant themselves. Vaillant, I got the impression they didn't really want to know about it. However, I kept going, and an engineer came out and he changed 2 sensors and a PCB board. So that's actually why I can't give you some of the Vaillant 13-month measurements, because the brains of the system was changed and therefore it all started from scratch again. So what I noticed after that happened, though, all of a sudden the COP readings were, jumped up dramatically. So since that PCB board was changed, our seasonal performance estimations, so your SCOP for the whole system is 4.29. And then if you want to deal with just the heating, the SCOP is 5.3, and the SCOP for the hot water, and remember we choose to do that overnight, is 3.1. So essentially that means for you know, if you've got a SCOP of 4 for 1 unit of electric you put in, you're getting 4 units of heat out. So that's mega efficient. Gas boilers work the other way in reverse. So yeah, we had that little bit of an issue with Vaillant, but that got fixed. I'm very, very happy with the whole system. It's running very, very cheap, and we've got no issues with it whatsoever. Happy with the installation team. So all in all, I am very happy with the decision we made to install the heat pump. We no longer have gas, so that's nice, nice and clean for the environment. We also save 60 pence a day by not having a standing charge for gas. So probably worth trying to nail down what our average is. Now this is actually quite important, especially if you're trying to marry up with, let's say, battery storage. So if I was to try and work out what a daily average is, I can kind of do that. So what we need to do is take our sums that we know. So 5,767 kilowatt hours, subtract 600 from that month, which is going to give us 12 months. Then what we want to do is subtract the hot water in the summer months. So that ends up giving us a figure of 4,327 kilowatt hours. Divide that by your 6 months and then 30 days. That's giving me an average of 24 kilowatt hours per day. So that's based on heating and hot water in the winter months. Now, give or take 1, that's how confident I am that that's pretty accurate. So 24 kilowatt hours a day to heat this home. So 4-bedroom home, detached home, not particularly well insulated. I would say it sits about in the middle. 24 kilowatt hours per day, and remember we've got 28 kilowatt hours of battery storage. Our home will use about 10 kilowatt hours of electric per day, excluding EV charging. So that's why one of the most crucial numbers if you're on a good tariff is what is your ratio from peak to off peak, and our ratio is north of 95%. Now that number comes from Octopus, so that's why I'm pretty confident with a 7 pence per kilowatt hour into our whole home. So yeah, I think we've pretty much covered everything that I wanted to cover there. So signing off with, I've got absolutely no regrets in getting our heat pump installed, and I absolutely do think it's the way forward. Let me know if you're happy with your install or not below, and hopefully if I can help anyone out, please get in touch. Thanks. Goodbye.